every time we'll have the working mobility group meeting.
Announcement from interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your languages. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and welcome to the May 9th, 2024 Mobility Working Group meeting. I'm Jose Rodriguez, council member from the City of National City and chairing today's meeting. Before we begin, I would like to ask Tessa, who's serving as our clerk, to confirm that we have quorum.
Good morning, Chair. Yes, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. And before we start, I would like to confirm on how we would like to conduct today's meeting. If you wish to speak, any committee group members, you can simply raise your hand, nothing too official. And will we be using clickers today, Tessa? Or? Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so moving on to item number 1, member public comments. And I do see a lot of new faces in the room. Is it okay if we do a quick round of introductions? I guess I started. Jose Rodriguez, council member from the City of National City.
Good morning, Alex Soraya, Technology Planning Manager, and I'm sitting in today for Jennifer Williamson.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Bridges, and I'm the Active Transportation Planner for the City of Coronado.
Morning, everybody. Mario Sanchez, City Engineer, City of El Cajon.
I'm Jonathan Schabel, and I'm Principal Engineer, City of Escondido.
Carol Seabury, City Council, Imperial Beach.
Steve Manganello, Director of Engineering Public Works, National City.
Tila Cotter, City Traffic Engineer for Oceanside.
Good morning, Tracy Beach with the City of Poway, City Engineer.
Roy Bood, Deputy for Planning and Local Assistance for Caltrans District 11.
Oh, I clicked the wrong one. I thought this one was closer. I think it's closer. And good morning, everybody. Lorena Cordova, I'm the Community Partnership Program Analyst for Navy Region Southwest. I'm sitting in for Deputy Muska-like. Good morning, and nice to meet all of you.
My name is Sophia Hughes. I'm the representative from FACT, which is the CTSA for San Diego.
Larry Renfrew Luna. I'm a transportation planner with MTS.
Morning, everyone. Mary Dover. I'm the Chief of Staff for the North County Transit District, sitting in for Katie Parsons, who's our Director of Service Planning.
Good morning, Ted Anasis, Manager in Planning and Environmental Affairs at the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority.
And good morning, I'm Anna Bazaitis with the Planning Department at the Port of San Diego, sitting in for Lisa Madsen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the Acting Chief of Long Range Planning for the County of San Diego.
Mo Samak, Public Works Director, City Engineer, City of Solana Beach.
I'm Carl Schmitz, Director of Engineering, City Engineer for the City of Santee.
And Stephanie Keller, Deputy City Engineer, City of San Marcos. Good morning.
Thank you all so much and welcome. We do have a SANDAG staff announcement that will be provided by Ashley Wiley.
Hi, everyone. So I just have a quick update on Bike Anywhere Day. It is next Thursday, May 16th, and there's still time to sign up and join us.
There will be over 100 pit stops throughout the region, open from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. with refreshments, shirts, and fun. You can see all the pit stops on our map on the website at sandag.org/bike month. New this year is Bike Local Day that's happening on Saturday, May 18th. We are encouraging people to support their local business by bike. Businesses are offering promotions on this day and are also listed on our website. If there is a business in your community that would like to participate by offering a discount to riders, they can still submit their promotion by going to sandag.org/bikelocal. If you have any questions, please email biking@sandag.org. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another announcement by Mr. Alex Estrella.
Yes, for those that are familiar with and know Subir Sawada, wanted to share that there's going to be a educational talk on MUTCD on AB 43. And some of you may have received the invite from LAG, but it's this Thursday on May 31st at 10:30 at the San Marcos Community Center dining room. And the address is 3 Civic Center Drive in the city of San Marcos, California. If you would like to get some information, because I believe you do have to RSP, I could follow up with sending that information out to the members.
Excuse me, Alex. Is there an opportunity to participate online, maybe remotely on that workshop?
I don't know, but we could find out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any additional comments or questions from committee members regarding SANDAG staff announcements? No. Any comments from members of the public?
Thank you. I have one public commenter, the original draw. Please go ahead.
Wondering how many of you guys are going to actually bike that day. And it's a little bit interesting to hear about discounts that would be given to people who are doing that. Like, if businesses are suffering, I don't know that they need to be given a discount just because somebody's riding a bike somewhere, unless you guys are going to make up for it, which, I mean, who knows? But it's just sad to see that, you know, this group and, you know, even just SANDAG in general, and it's happening in all the cities as well, pushing, you know, everybody out of driving. And, you know, I mean, it's sad because that's coming down the pipe, and your intention is to pretend to save the planet, but get people on to walking and biking and public transit. And, you know, having been in a wheelchair for 8 years of my life, paralyzed, it's like, I don't think that you think about everybody in that plan and how it affects certain people, like just, you know, even the elderly and whatnot. It's pretty ridiculous what's going on, and you guys are all complicit in it.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Moving on to consent. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
One public comment from the original draw. Please go ahead.
I'm wondering why, when you're doing the minutes, that you don't really write anything more than names. You know, in other cities or different other meetings, there'll be, you know, more of a description for that, so people could actually go and look and see what's happened in the meeting. Instead, it's just kind of basic information, so there's not a whole lot there for people to really get a good idea of what happens in the meeting. So I don't know, whoever is doing those notes, I feel like they could do a little bit more to add a little bit more information, so that if somebody's reading that, they can really have more of a clue as to what actually took place in the meeting, as opposed to just saying, like, your members and you commented. You know, there, you could put a few, you know, small like sentences or short sentences, I mean, to provide to the people as far as what's taken place. Otherwise, I don't really know how they're minutes, because it's just like a name that's there.
And that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from committee members? No. I will entertain a motion to approve consent.
Anasis, move approval.
Thank you. I butchered your last name last time. Seabury, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Everybody in favor? We just say aye. Raise hands. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain since I wasn't at the last meeting.
Thank you.
Abstain.
We have all the abstentions? I think it was 4. All right, motion carries. Moving on to item number 3, we have reports. So we will have SANDAG's Manager of Financial Programming and Project Control, Michelle Smith, will provide an update on Transnet Extension Ordinance amendments.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Smith. I'm the Manager of Financial Programming and Project Controls here at SANDAG. And just to let you know that I believe in the agenda, the link for this presentation, it does not currently work, so it will be sent out after this meeting. So make sure yes. So I'm here to provide an update on what we have accomplished so far and next steps for our Transnet Ordinance amendments. So what have we accomplished so far? As part of the overall process, the subcommittee was presented with topics for discussion, which included an initial education and discussion for one meeting, followed by a vote at the following meeting. In the beginning, the subcommittee worked fast and met often, which was determined to be a little bit too much, and the cadence of the meetings were slowed down to allow for more discussion and increased understanding of the proposed amendments. One of the first issues for consideration by the Transnet Ordinance Subcommittee was to review the transit operations and transit operator eligibility portion of the Transnet Ordinance. The language from the 2004 ordinance outlined that the transit operators are required to demonstrate that their total operating cost should not increase by any more than the Consumer Price Index or CPI increase in order to be eligible for Transnet funding. The ordinance also includes funding for reduced price monthly transit programs for seniors, persons with disabilities, and students, among others. The subcommittee's mission to revise the transit operations language was to re-examine the Transnet Ordinance. After discussion, the subcommittee voted to update the metric used from the CPI to the California Public Utilities Code for the development of the Transportation Development Act funding. After voting, 74% were in favor of this recommended update. The second mission of the subcommittee was to review the local streets and roads programming, which allocates funding for each jurisdiction to supplement other revenues available for local streets and roads improvements. Important to mention is that the 2004 ordinance outlines that no more than 30% of this fund source should be used for maintenance projects, with the remaining to be utilized for congestion relief projects. During the discussion, an updated local streets and roads project type list was updated and approved, which is subject to change, of course. And the subcommittee also unanimously approved to remove the 70-30 split and allow for greater flexibility on how the local agency spends their funds. For the next topic, Dig Smart, the subcommittee received a thorough presentation from the SANDAG team on digital infrastructure, noting the key domains in our region, including utilities, public services, and transportation, and how those services result in different elements from the regional plan. The ordinance currently does not include any policies related to Dig Smart, so SANDAG and the subcommittee recognize the importance of including a new policy in their final recommendations. Additionally, the added policy would allow SANDAG to enable the next OS, including intelligent transportation solutions and smart city initiatives, streamline planning and permitting, save on cost and time of construction projects, and accelerate the distribution of digital infrastructure. Following the discussion, 84% of the subcommittee approved to include this amendment. Another important component of the congestion relief program within the Transnet Ordinance is a Smart Growth Incentive Program. This program provides funding for planning and transportation infrastructure improvements that help local agencies to integrate transportation and land use. The recommendation for this amendment was to remove the geographical boundaries from eligibility, as noted, and that projects must advance multimodal transportation, demonstrate VMT and GHG reduction, advance equity, and align with the regional plan. After much discussion, 85% of the subcommittee voted in favor of this amendment. The next priority of the Transnet Subcommittee was to review and propose the amendments to the Transnet Ordinance related to the bicycle and pedestrian accommodations, published with rules within Board Policy 31 and Rule number 21. The 2018 Transnet Triennial Performance Audit recommended that we update this rule to align with our complete streets policy and best practices and design resources. Since the inception of Transnet, foundation bicycle and pedestrian planning, facility selection and design standards have been released and updated, including but not limited to the FHWA's and NACTO design guidelines. This topic was discussed in depth with the subcommittee and was also discussed with this group back in November. Staff continued to work with the subcommittee to try to arrive at a common ground. And after several months of discussion, a vote was taken in March of 2024, with 50% of the subcommittee who disagree but will go along and 50% who strongly disagree. Based on these results, the subcommittee noted that there are opportunities to improve the ordinance further. The amendment can be brought back to the Mobility Working Group, in which some of the subcommittee, along with their Mobility Working Group members, will have the opportunity to discuss and solidify the amendments as they move forward to the Board of Directors. The final two topics were more of a discussion and education item with no vote taken. This slide illustrates our latest work plan as of October 2023, which includes what our plans were at that time. And as you can see, we had planned to complete the bike ped item last year, but it was pushed out through March of 2024 to ensure that all comments were addressed. This pushed the performance monitoring and reporting out further, with the expected time to be determined. The updated timeline as of today shows where we are based on current direction. Within the next few months, we will be releasing a final document that provides an in-depth overview of the topics, the discussion, and the final voting scores. It will also include how we plan to approach the final topic of performance monitoring and reporting. And depending on our new executive direction, we are planning on taking the Transnet ordinance amendments in 2025 to the board and ITALC and TC for final approval. So what are our next steps? So as I mentioned, we are going to release a summary of the report that will provide what was discussed, what was voted, and further information on the actual amendments within that report. We will review work plan for performance metrics and evaluation. So we will decide how we're going to approach the performance monitoring and reporting section. We will then present Transnet ordinance amendments to our committees and our board of directors. Once those have been approved, then we will update the Transnet ordinance. And that is my update. And I'm here for any questions.
Thank you so much. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
Thank you. We have one public comment, the original draw. Please go ahead.
It's crazy to hear you guys talk about smart city initiatives and all that. They're 15-minute cities. I don't know if you pay attention to what's going on around the world, but they're using even ALPRs in Europe to, keep people out of low emission zones and, keep people. It's all about controlling the people's movements and everything that they're doing within a small space, because you guys don't want us out in the unincorporated area, right? It's all the United Nations Agenda 21, 2030, 2050, to take all resources, control them, control the people's movements, make sure that everything is under your thumb. And in that, you're actually doing it to yourself. I mean, people aren't even able to leave their 15-minute zones without getting permits in other places. And so, I mean, are you going to be complicit in providing that and then make it so that the people are enslaved in these tiny little areas and unable to go and, see their family if they're a couple of 15-minute cities away? I mean, because you guys aren't outside of that. And I don't know that if that sounds good to you, it's really disturbing.
And that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any committee member comments or questions? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. With respect to bicycle and pedestrian accommodation, I think the slide mentioned update for reconsideration. Can you elaborate?
Yes. So we did take a vote in March of 2024. Go back. The reason why I have update for reconsideration is because it was such a 50-50 split, with 50% with a strongly disagree. So if it is needed, we can come back to this working group for further discussion. And once we restart the subcommittee, we may be able to provide more information and see if there are any availability for changes.
So the plan is to bring it back to the subcommittee?
As of now, yes.
Okay, I appreciate that. I also wanted to mention that during the subcommittee discussion, it was recommended by the subcommittee members that we bring the ordinance back to this working group and share various components of the changes, proposed changes with the entire team. I think it would be appropriate to do so, specifically if you're going to go to iTalk with the percentages of the approval, disapproval that was shown in there. I think it would be important to recognize that those percentages are just the votes of the subcommittee members. Subcommittee recommended that we should really get the vote of the entire mobility working group. So when we present the percentages, it would reflect the opinion of the entire team. So that's just a comment that I'd like to make. And then the subcommittee members are ready to reconvene at any time that SANDAG provides us with a time slot. So I'd like to kind of continue the process so we can get into a resolution as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Keller?
Thank you. I agree with your comments. Thank you for making them. And I think what I understand you to be saying is that you are unsure whether there is flexibility in the requirement for accommodations for bicycles and peds. Is that correct?
Yes, so we need to review what it is that the majority of the not in favor was, and review that and then review it with our executive team. So
Okay.
that just requires further discussion.
Okay, so at this point, is it fair to say that there's maybe a lack of understanding about why the representatives in the subcommittee were opposing those provisions?
I don't know if it's lack of understanding. There's two very strong opinionated sides to this item. So there's two choices. We can go back to the subcommittee to try to see if we can work together and then try to come to a greater understanding, or we move forward with the 50% non-agreeable side and then see what our board of directors wants to do from there.
Okay, so at this point, then you may or may not return to the subcommittee. You're leaning towards returning to the subcommittee, but that is not a firm decision at this point.
That is pending executive leadership determination. So as you're aware, we just have a new appointed CEO. So all this was kind of put on hold until we are able to discuss with that new CEO. Yes.
All right, understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I do remember having this conversation last time we had a working group meeting. It was right after the February board retreat, where the majority of the members mentioned that they wanted to have a discussion, this discussion at the board instead of the working group. And I think at the time we kind of agreed, and that's why we're here. So the plan was to bring it up to the board, and that was indeed, I think, the sentiment of the board committee members that were part of the retreat.
So with the mobility working group still, as you mentioned, Mo, like, do you want to have a mobility working group vote on each one of these amendments before going to the board, or do you want that to be a board discussion?
I mean, I thought we discussed it last time. They would go to the board because that was a sentiment of board members during the retreat. So I would prefer that option, seeing as the entire board wanted to have a discussion about it.
Okay.
Is that something that we would have to, seeing as this is only a discussion item, I don't know where it goes from there. And I don't know if we could vote on this particular item now, but.
We can come back at another meeting and we can discuss the amendments individually. If that is your choice, we can either do it all together in one meeting, which would take a while, or we can come back with certain amendments if the working group would like to take a vote before taking it to the board. We do have time since we're not currently scheduled to go until next year. So that is definitely something that we can work into the schedule.
I mean, I would open it up to members of the working group. How do you all feel?
Sam Hassan in City Vista. I think we would like to see it here, just kind of hear more detail about the amendments.
the city of Santee would prefer to bring it back to the committee to hear a little bit more about the amendments as well.
I have one comment, City of El Cajon. Yeah, I'm on the subcommittee as well, and I agree with what Mo was saying, that we bring this back to the board or to this committee and for them to review it as well.
I'm more curious about what the differences are with what the issues were being discussed with the pedestrian bicycle and why there was such a strong difference of opinion. So what kind of items were actually being discussed? So I'm more, you don't have to answer that now, but I think when we bring it back, maybe bringing back some of the examples of why there was such a debate.
Yeah, at the last working group, when we came in November, we specifically brought the bike ped item, which discussed where SANDAG and the mobility and the subcommittee disagreed. So that includes those updates. And then when we provide the final report on where we've been so far, like kind of a summary report we have, that will all be in there as well.
So how does everybody feel about bringing this back in maybe in a series of meetings, not just in one, throughout the course of the year before it heads to the board? Does that sound like consensus? Yeah. All right, sounds good.
Okay.
Any additional comments or questions?
Escondido. Looking at the vote, and I wasn't here, so I'm just looking at it with fresh eyes. The accommodation of bikes and peds, you characterize it as kind of a split, and it says 50-50 on the agenda item. But if you look closer, it's actually 100% disagreement. And so I want to be careful we don't make it sound like it's 50% in favor, 50% not in favor. It seemed like it was pretty clear it was 100% disagreement, but 50% were willing to go along if they're outvoted. So I just wanted to mention that. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, thank you all so much. This is a discussion item only. Moving on to item number 4. Our own Alex Estrella again, SANDAG's Technology Planning Manager, will provide an update on RAMs and the formation of the task force.
Good morning, everyone. It's happy to see a lot of very familiar faces. It's been some time. But this item is a discussion item and specifically focuses on 2 elements. One is decommissioning the existing cost-sharing funding model for the RAMs established platform back in 2011, and also the formation of what we're calling a Transportation Systems Management and Operations Task Force. So with that, let me just start with some high-level background on the RAMs. And I recognize that a lot of you weren't here when we established the RAMs. It's been some time. So we're going to take a trip down memory lane going back to the early 2000s. Don't want to show my age, but I've been working with SANDAG since 2003. But as part as the US DOT's ITS Showcase Priority Quarter program, SANDAG, working with many of you at the regional and local level, we got some funding from the feds, and we established what we call the Arterial Management Project. And really the objective was to work with all of you so then we could come up with a system where the technology, or apply the technology at that particular time and serve as an enabler to enhance signal timing across jurisdictions. So that was done by the establishment of a common software application, also establishing a dedicated communications line, and really thus allowing the traffic signals and essentially across agencies to talk to each other and also share signal timing plans, really with the focus or user perspective to improve user experience in terms of stop and go between the intersections, but also improve overall travel times at that time. Now, we know technology changes, it's matured since then, but there's a couple things that have happened since then. There's been advances. If you're a traffic engineer or city engineer, you understand that there's been advances in signal controllers or systems. There's also been expansions in terms of how those software or elements are expanded to provide other functionalities, like for vulnerable users, safety. There's been expansion in detection solutions, and also, as you're all familiar, there's a large effort to also moving to the connected vehicle and infrastructure environment. Now, if you couple that with also some regional initiatives that actually we as planners or transportation planners or engineers, there's been a wide range of initiatives that happened since then. The first one I could think of is Vision Zero. So there's an increased focus on safety, right? So there's more technology components. But there's also the whole, and really the reasoning for makeup of this mobility working group is that we're thinking beyond just traffic engineers, right? We're mobility professionals, right? So we're thinking about other elements, not just traffic engineering. So there's multimodal solutions, there's other solutions like flexible fleets, but they're all predicated on the use and application of technologies and clean technology at the intersection level. So that's why it's leading us today. We want to take a pause and reassess and consider the advancements of smart signal technologies. And really the first step is to decommission that cost sharing ramps. And doing so will allow SANDAG to conclude an agreement that we've had since 2000, I believe 9, since we started, with the same current vendor. Because every year we would come to you by way of programming or MOUs and say, hey, let's revamp and let's bring the same vendor and expand the contract with them to provide maintenance support. What I like to do is just take some time to kind of give you a timeline of what I'm talking about. And again, it's been some time, so I'm just highlighting some key elements for those that were not involved, but just provide some context. So again, back in 2009, we were developing the RAMS platform and all the elements associated with that. And that was carried out and implemented in 2 phases. The first phase included with limited integrations with 3 agencies at that point, the City of San Diego, Chula Vista, and Caltrans, and eventually was rolled out to the remaining agencies in phase 2. The reason why you only see here 15 agencies is because obviously the context behind the RAMS platform is to coordinate signal timing across the agencies, right? But there's 3 agencies at that particular point that they didn't have any coordinating elements like Coronado, Imperial Beach, and Solana Beach. So they weren't part of that system. In 2011, that's when the old traffic engineers, what we call city traffic engineer, SANTEC, and also the cities and county transportation professionals established this cost sharing contribution. So the system was deployed, agencies were using it. So we wanted to make sure that we had the necessary support from the vendor. And we started and established a cost sharing distribution where all of you guys through the programming or through direct MOUs would commit to paying a fair share of maintaining that vendor on board for bug fixes, for upgrades, maintenance efforts. And then that's how we would establish that. And we would come to you, all of you every year, say, okay, we want to, if you haven't programmed your RAMS funding, please do so. And the way that was established is by cross rate by the number of signals with the specific agencies. Just to highlight, since then, the original software was upgraded in 2018. So there were some service elements associated with that. And then since 2000, as of 2024, 3 agencies have opted out of the RAMS. And the reason being because those agencies are actually looking at new software systems or signal systems that would meet their needs. So they're looking and considering other technology components. So they've opted out that cost sharing distribution, meaning that the cost sharing distribution is only assessed across what that would be 13 or 12 agencies remaining. But again, based on the 2011 platform, signal timing platform under contract. So now, SANDAG is also seeking to form a TISMO task force with members from this agency and also other agency members, not necessarily mobility, but also IT professionals. And the reason is that we want to take a look at new RAMS platforms to continue that vision, right? But we want to express that vision by looking at not just signal timing vision, but also other technology components as we start working together and start implementing technologies, because just about every project that we work on has a technology element associated with that. Included in attachment 2 provides a little bit more breakdown of what that TISMO, what the focus and the purpose of the TISMO task force. And basically it focuses on based on my experience on 3 key core focus areas. They're not fully fleshed out, but provide some context to that. And what I would like to do is just walk you through that. One of the things that I've learned, and I'm sure a lot of you that deal with technology, what we're finding out is that technology is the enabler. Meaning that technology can only take us as far as much as we do the appropriate planning up front, but consider the implementation of technology from the full life cycle, implementation, piloting, and also proper planning. So that takes institutional commitment up front. And that's one of the things that I've learned, because if we don't do that proper planning or consider institutional commitment up front, then I guarantee you that technology will only take us or be limited benefits at the end of the day. The other thing too is technology has changed so much over the years. Our objectives have changed so much over the years. We know that we have smart technology available. Everything's connected now. So that gives us the opportunity, at least from a regional perspective, to expand the vision of what we want technology. And that requires sometimes changes in the way we operate and maintain and manage technology components. Signal system is just one example, right? So it does require some institutional guidance, but also some thinking and operational philosophy change in the way we manage our transportation system. Again, technology is enabled, and without properly considering and pushing the bounds beyond the traditional siloed approach or our existing comfort levels, the solutions that we would think about will be limited. And that's why we want to establish this TISMO task force. There's more detail in the attachment. But I want to bring this to the team because this is something that we have in our regional plan, ideally because we have a number of new solutions or strategies, but it's bounded by technology. So as we start thinking about those solutions, there's a technology component, and working with all of you, we want to make sure that we plan appropriately as we consider the application of those technology solutions. So in summary, in terms of the next steps, and before the chair opens up for question, we would like to proceed with decommissioning the cost sharing ramps. And that'll allow us the ability to conclude the existing traffic signal system contract. Also, we would like to work with, and I have staff here from Bill Mount, who's leading me in this effort, who's more on the technical side. So he would lead any efforts related to working with all of your agencies to decommission or have those one-on-one technical discussions with Bill and your staff. But we also have the programming staff available to give more specifics that would work one-on-one with your staff on the cost sharing distribution that we established. And also, we would like to proceed with the formation of the TISMO task force. With members from this working group. And the first step for the TISMO task force is once we get some members, then one of the first steps is we're going to start establish a work plan, but also start thinking about meeting cadences, subject matter elements. So that's pretty much it. I mentioned Bill Mount here, and then programming staff, Michelle, and I thought I saw Richard also available for any questions on the programming. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Estrella. Do we have any questions from the members of the public?
For public comments, sorry, I can't seem to pull it up. There we go. We have one, the original draw. Please go ahead.
I mean, even if I had a question, it wouldn't be answered, so there'd be no point in asking one. But it's interesting when you guys talk about wanting to improve travel times while you're engaged in slowing them down. Because a lot of the stuff that you're doing with your old complete streets and everything is actually causing more traffic and not less. So when you want to improve travel times, just quit doing all of that stuff. I mean, it would behoove you to do that if that's actually something that you want to do. And anytime we bring in technology, it's a little bit terrifying because, I mean, it's like the city of San Diego wanting AI to run stuff. I mean, are you going to be bringing in AI, to use? I mean, because I think that can get dangerous. And anytime we have all of this technology and smart tech, it allows for things to be hacked. And we have already had, the Chinese or whoever probably someone in America hacking into the infrastructure and affecting it, especially even the 911 system. So, I mean, when you do that, it's setting yourself up to actually have more problems.
Thank you. That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any committee member comments or questions? Yes.
When you were talking about decommissioning the cost sharing for RAMs, what was the time frame on that?
What could be the time frame of the reprogramming? I'll defer to the programming staff. For those agencies that are already in the current RTIP, maybe Michelle or Richard.
That would just depend on the current amendment schedule. We would just work with staff to get them programmed in the, whatever was the current RTIP amendment.
And what's that schedule, Richard?
We currently have one open now for July board approval. And then we would have the 2025 RTIP adoption with September board approval. And I think the first amendment to the 2025 RTIP will be approved by the board in January of 2025.
So essentially between now and July.
Mm-hmm.
For those that are programmed beyond FY 26 or 25, sorry.
For those programmed beyond 25.
Okay, thank you.
So question over here first. No? Yeah, just raise your hands. All right, here we go. Got here and there.
Sam Hassan in City Vista. So I do agree with Alex that the technology has outpaced the current RAMs that, we started back in 2011. So I think it's probably time to sunset that and go into something different with the TISMO task force. That would be, I think, a good thing to kind of have some of the members talk about current technologies and how to proceed forward.
Thank you. Yes.
Sorry, Alex, just wondering how this would affect communication with Caltrans systems, and would that cause any issues at all?
No, in fact, Caltrans has been a great player, and they're moving with another system. So they were running two parallel systems, but yet committed to pay their cost share, and their cost share was by way of a direct MOU. So as long as we don't sign the MOU for future, then we're good. But yeah, we would coordinate with them, and in fact, I did circle back with Raj, and he's really looking forward to this TISMO task force.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, as a longtime RAMS user, we went to a different system, but I think this is a good plan to offer other cities more flexibility as new technology arises. So I go with this.
Thank you. Ms. Keller.
Thank you. San Marcos really advocates for that regional coordination. We do think that it's key moving forward. And we support the modernization of that coordination. So moving away from the RAM system and the limitations of that, the current contract are something that we advocate for. So we appreciate what you're proposing here. And then as far as setting up the TISMO task force, that is certainly welcome as well. I'm glad that Caltrans is here. I think that you are a very important piece of that conversation going forward. For 5 corridor cities, for 78 corridor cities, we have major arterials that we cannot properly coordinate or time without Caltrans participation. And we're currently experiencing the limitations of that on Nordal, for instance. So we need to be able to coordinate with you and have our signals talk with you. So I'm happy to hear that coordination is happening, and we would really welcome Caltrans participation in any kind of working group or task force. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? Yes.
Escondido, just following up on Oceanside's question, you're talking about the funding moving forward for RAMs and sunsetting that, but is there an actual contract, it sounds like there is, in place that has sort of an end date for the RAM services?
We actually do have a contract in place, and the way we would execute sort of the future services would be on an annual basis. So it concludes in June of 2024. And ideally, we've let McCain know of SANDAG's approach, and they're aware of that. So then we would technically not extend or amend that contract.
So the end date would basically be this June.
Correct. And keep in mind that the McCain would mainly be for customer service, right? Bug fixes, and any associated services associated with that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments? All right, this is a discussion item only. We will be moving on to item number 5, where we will hear from SANDAG's Regional Planning Climate Program Manager, Susan Friedman, on the Regional Zero Emissions Vehicle Incentive Program update.
Great, thank you. I'm just getting the clicker. Good morning, everybody. As you mentioned, Chair, I'm here to talk about a zero emission vehicle incentive program that we're developing right now that we have hope to open in 2025. We currently have a Caltrans planning grant to do the research and development, and we partnered with the County of San Diego to get this done. And really, we're here today because we have a draft, I'll say draft strategy, but there's key elements of it and the program that we really want to get your input on so that we can finalize a draft and move forward. So a little bit about the program. This would be to provide rebates or a discount for the purchase of new or used zero emission vehicles. We're really looking at plug-in battery electric vehicles as well as plug-in hybrid vehicles. This was a greenhouse gas reduction measure in the 2021 regional plan. It's part of the way we're reducing the emissions in the region. And to get the program funded, we have applied for an EPA grant through their climate pollution reduction program, which would bring about, if awarded, about $19 million for rebates in the region. And we're looking at 2 big priorities with this project. One is the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from passenger vehicles. And the other one is to provide rebates for low and moderate income households who have typically not been served by current state or other programs in this area. So first thing we did was look at what's out there right now, both what are the existing conditions when it comes to EVs and ownership in the region, but also there's several programs around the country. So what's been working, what's not been working, and how can we take those lessons learned and apply them to San Diego region? So with this, I'll say the map on the right is showing the EV ownership in the region. The darker the green is where more people own EVs. The lighter the color is where there is little to no ownership. And then the dotted lines, this is hard to read. The dots on there are also our disadvantaged community areas and low-income areas. So you can see that there's, in only a few circumstances, some darker green in there. But we found is, I don't think this is news to anyone, but there's less ownership of zero emission vehicles in lower income households and communities. And that if we want to expand access to EVs, we really need to look at and figure out what are some of those barriers and if we're able to offer some of the solutions to transition or offer the option of EVs to more people in the region. Some other things we learned from, we interviewed about a dozen program managers in the state and other parts of the country who are running EV incentive programs. And hearing one is to try and avoid the first come, first serve type program where all the money could get reserved on day one. So it's only for people who are very savvy or, you know, just got a vehicle. It doesn't really give folks an option long term. Another piece of this is that if we do any kind of program that is focused on equity, we should also be doing financial education and technical assistance to provide more support on what it is to own an EV and how it's a little different than owning a gas vehicle or a diesel vehicle. And then wherever possible, if we can do point of sale programs. And that's instead of with the state rebate program, that was the California Vehicle Rebate Project, CVRP. That was one where you had to fill out an application after you bought your vehicle. And then depending on if they still had money in their budget, could take best case was 6 or 8 weeks, but worst case was more 6 or 8 months to get your check. And that reduced certainty of actually getting a rebate. So if we're able to do something a little differently, that is definitely, we heard, a best practice. So in addition to doing the research around the region, we also did a lot of community engagement. We held 5 focus groups in March. 3 were with our local community-based organizations, and 2 were with residents that represented folks that live about everywhere in the county. And we were targeting low-income and moderate-income households with the outreach. And from these focus groups and engagement, we really heard a lot about what people want to see if they're going to even consider taking part in a program. So I'll start with the biggest barriers and then go with some of the program preferences, which I even said from talking to the other program managers. But even though this is a vehicle program, what came up most often was limited access to EV chargers, especially home chargers for anyone who rents, as well as for if you're in a multifamily housing, that's also a difficult one to get chargers into, and a lack of public charging in a lot of communities where there's lots of big pockets of chargers in the region, like we're doing great in some areas, but there's a lot of room for improvement as well. There's also higher upfront costs with the purchase of a EV compared to a very similar vehicle that is a gas vehicle. The monthly payments can be higher. Insurance payments are typically higher. And then there's just a lack of experience with driving an EV. So not really going to consider that unless there's more opportunities like ride and drive events, which are held annually, but maybe there's something we can do more there to expand experience. Because once people have some experience with an EV, they've shown that they typically want to consider an EV in a future purchase. In terms of program preferences, and these were like an hour-and-a-half focus groups, so we really dove into these discussions. But again, this is where we heard loud and clear, if it's possible to do this at the point of sale or where somebody receives, like fills out a form ahead of time before they go to a new or a used car dealer, that would be the biggest preference. I think everybody hears this with incentives though, you know, the higher incentive, the better. We've got some data on a future slide for this. Definitely want some technical assistance just because it is a new type of vehicle. So there's some uncertainty with making a purchase like that. And then for just participating in programs, should be in multiple languages, should be simple to understand. There should be a call line for if there's questions about it. So we took that information from talking to community groups and to residents, as well as from best practices around the country, and put that together into a draft strategy. And so I'm highlighting some key components that I'm going to be asking you guys, what do you think about this at the end here? But first is with program administration. That could either be SANDAG runs the whole program internally. We hire a bunch of staff that can process rebates, as well as know the ins and outs of addressing EV issues that might come up. The preferred model is having a third-party program administrator. This is what most governments do. So that is our recommendation here, is going with a third party. There's several organizations around the country that manage these programs for governments. And they would handle all the day-to-day operation, including having a website, the processing, liability issues, dealing with dealerships, as well as dealing with customers. The next slide here is on the type of incentive and the structure. It's, if possible, to be focused on point of sale rather than once somebody purchases the vehicle to fill in a rebate application and mail it in somewhere or submit it online. A second piece, and I think I spoke about that in past slides. Another piece is making this a needs-based, is the term model, rather than first come, first serve. And that again is to have something that's available for folks rather than just it all gets bought up on day one, which is what happened with our charger incentive program. When we opened that a few years back with the state and with the Air District, It was a $22 million program, and all the money was reserved in the first half hour on day one. And so it didn't leave any opportunity for anyone who didn't know the program existed on day one. In terms of the application and pre-approval process, there's examples of this around the country of how this works, but there's various income verification ways we can do this, as well as having a voucher and working with dealerships ahead of time so that they can honor that to be able to purchase again a new or used vehicle. In terms of the types of vehicles, this was one that it's a couple nuances here. At first, when we started this effort, we were looking at maybe only 100% electric vehicles, battery electric completely. But from talking with community members, we really heard in the issue with charging access, it made sense to offer plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, which are that combination of you ride on electric miles for a certain distance, and then it seamlessly switches over to gas. And this would help out for anyone who does not have access to home charging, or maybe does not have access regularly to charging, so that they can still operate a vehicle with full confidence. Another area, we were looking at fuel cell electric vehicles as well that are powered by hydrogen. We do not recommend having that, at least at the start of a vehicle incentive program, and that one's for a few reasons. One, there's very few passenger vehicle models that are fuel cell available. They're much more expensive than the battery electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles. And well, two more reasons. And then with the infrastructure, there's only 2 gas stations that have hydrogen in San Diego County right now. There's several in permitting, so that'll grow, but right now, only 2 in an entire county is rough. And then the cost of the fuel is also extremely high right now. It's about $30 for kilogram or your gas equivalent. It needs to be under $10 for that to be affordable through the research our consultants have done. So for that, we want to leave fuel cells off the table, at least for now, and we'll revisit that and probably in a couple years. Some other things, we want to look at new and used vehicles. That's another one, the research and hearing from community members. Lots of people do not buy new cars. So if we are actually trying to address giving cleaner transportation options to everybody in the region, we need to look at both new and used vehicles to make that even a consideration. And then also, and this is typical of most programs, there's a cap on the cost of the vehicles. It gets out a bunch of luxury vehicles, but also so that the car dealers couldn't say, jack up prices if there's an incentive for $5,000, then they just, bulk up their price by $5,000. This kind of gets away from that. Okay, so this is on how we were looking at eligibility for residents in San Diego County. We're looking at both geographically at designated low-income or disadvantaged communities, and we were also looking at annual household income. And so what we think would be important would be to address both. Both have rebates are available if you are at 400% federal poverty level or below. And rebates are available if you reside in a low-income or disadvantaged community. And so on this table, we basically highlighted the bottom row, which is the sample size of a household of 3, which fit with who we were doing focus group meetings with. And it shows that, just for some sense of this, at about 300%, federal poverty level is about $77,000 a year, a little over $100,000 at 400% federal poverty level. And this seemed to be a sweet spot for potential for purchasing electric vehicles. The rebate would be offered for 300% and below, and we would have a higher rebate for that, for the income at that area or in a low-income disadvantaged community, and a lower rebate amount for 301% to 400%. And I have, I can show you the next slide here. I do want to say we also were looking at whether there should be any special treatment if someone resides in a multi-unit dwelling, and we really were moving away from that idea because that housing was not the only barrier, say, to access to charging. People who live in a single family home but are renting it, people without driveways. There's lots of different housing types that can still have a barrier to having an EV. So we felt like we shouldn't be singling out just one housing type in that sense. And so this was some of the research that ICF, our consultant, did on this project, looking at what it looked like for what we've got as blue is plug-in hybrid EVs and the average cost, as well as plug-in, I can't even read this, my eyesight's not good enough. I'll just say that the average cost of used vehicles and new vehicles are the two red vertical lines on the right side. And that looking at 400% FPL, 300%, 200%, and 100%, it kind of showed it shows what level of disposable income was available based on a proprietary model ICF has to spend on vehicles. So then we applied what do EVs cost and see what that gap is. And it's still a large gap. So what it's showing us is from the data, it was showing likely there wouldn't be people at the 100% FPL that would still even consider an EV. But some people, if they were able to have a vehicle incentive from SANDAG that they could stack along with other incentives, like there's one with the Air Pollution Control District, and there's a just open last week one with SDG&E for used cars, that can then at least bring them into an area where they could consider an EV purchase, a used car. At 300%, you probably don't need to stack everything, but it still would be helpful. And then at 400%, potentially you wouldn't need a rebate for a used car, but you would definitely need one if you were going to consider a new car. And these, the red lines again are average cost of vehicles. So there are some vehicles that are a lot less. There's some that are a lot more. But these are some of the things we were thinking about with how do we create a program to transition more people or give them the option for EV, but also address expanding access to EVs. And so with that, that's really kind of wanting to get everybody's feedback on this. If you'd like, I do want to also add, we brought this presentation to our technical advisory group for the grant, and that was the Accelerate to Zero Emissions Collaboration Steering Committee. And that had representation from sub-regional staff, typically climate or fleet staff, as well as from two equity organizations, MAP and Grid Alternatives, the Air District, the county, the city of San Diego, and SDG&E. But now we're here to get additional feedback for how we structure an actual program. So really, any thoughts on new and used versus used vehicles? We think it should be both. Including plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, which give you less GHG reduction, but it expands access and addresses the barrier for lack of EV charging. The applicant eligibility, that was around, we wanted to look at both an incentive based on income level, as well as a geographic one if someone lives in a low income or disadvantaged community. And I'd say that was some of the feedback we got was from cities that did not have a designated disadvantaged community, but they had many low-income households. They want to make sure it was fair to help people in their communities as well. And then once we hear all this, we're going to finalize this draft strategy to then move forward with developing a program that could be launched if we get the EPA funding, which we'll find out about this summer. So with that, I'll stop talking, but would love to hear any feedback.
Thank you so much. Very insightful presentation. Thank you. Do we have any comments from members of the public?
Thank you, Chair. We have one public commenter, the original draw. Please go ahead.
First of all, they're called lithium bombs, and they are never going to have a clean footprint. Just making them they'll never save as much as it costs, like how much greenhouse gases it's causing just to make them. Anyway, you're always putting the cart before the horse. I don't understand why you would want to incentivize anybody to get into an electric vehicle when you don't have the infrastructure to support that. You don't have it to support what people have them now. And I mean, people get anxiety and are getting medicated because they have reach anxiety, being worried if they're going to make it to the next charging station. So I don't understand why you would even work towards incentivizing, giving people discounts and all of these things when you're not providing what needs to be provided. Even CARB is talking about, because they can't provide the infrastructure necessary for the EVs going into doing hydrogen, which doesn't make sense either, because then everybody'd have to get a new car. So, I mean, none of the stuff you guys are doing makes any sense. And it's putting people in a predicament once they get that car.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any committee member comments or questions? Yes.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I just have a comment on the hydrogen piece. NCTD received funding for 35 hydrogen fuel cell buses. We also have funding to construct a hydrogen fueling station at our bus operations facility in Oceanside. Obviously, that's not for personally operated vehicles, but long-term, we hope to either be a hydrogen generator ourselves or support hydrogen generation in San Diego County. So hopefully that will expand the personal operated vehicle hydrogen market.
Sorry, just to clarify, it's only for purchase of vehicle, the incentive, and not for infrastructure for charging. Is that correct?
Correct. This program is just for the vehicle side. We are operating a charger incentive, or there's no funding available for the public right now, but it was workplace public charging. There's still about a year left in those rebates actually installing and turning on chargers in the region. And then we'll start another phase.
But so you didn't consider the cost when you're doing your analysis of if someone wanted to install a charger as well as an additional cost burden that would be incurred?
No, we weren't looking at that part. We were looking at with some programs are to get at where there's charging deserts. And a lot of times we're talking folks that maybe aren't owning a home. So we wouldn't put it in charging, but some programs are offering cards to have a value for using public charging. And so we are researching that.
Yeah,
but it's also good to look into the combination that we could do.
Yeah, I'm just concerned because of the level of the vehicle price compared to the affordability for the lower income, because that's an additional burden. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions? Yes.
My only general question is in regard to new and used vehicles. I think maybe just some consideration on the age of the vehicle might be appropriate. Obviously, you don't want to fund some 7 or 8 year old Model S and have a $26,000 battery replacement, just as an example, that you hear about in the news quite a bit. But maybe set a time limit so that whoever's purchasing and they're getting a rebate for something knows going to have some longevity.
Thank you.
Yes.
I wanted to ask about the EVs, whether or not an incentivized program was looked at for ongoing incentives rather than just the first time incentive, meaning cost of insurance is very high for EVs, especially for low income housing. Things change, people get in accidents, it goes up, it's very high. Whether we can do some type of incentive program to be ongoing.
We hadn't looked into that yet, but what we were looking at and what the feedback was to have some level of financial literacy with the incentive program so that we look at all of those costs of ownership, not just the upfront purchase. So I feel like we've started that, but we haven't gone in further, so we can look into that more.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions? I really want to commend your work, that of SANDAG, to look at a very real problem that is naturally occurring in our community when we're trying to push for more EV infrastructure, charging stations, purchasing of vehicles in order to meet our 2035 statewide goal. So thank you so much for that. And I really, again, want to commend the efforts in a community like ours, a national city, where we have a 70% rental rate. Just having access to charging stations is a additional burden, right? And very difficult to overcome. We've started conversations in the city, national city, with our Director of Public Works and Engineering, Mr. Maginello, of trying to fully electrify our own fleet within the city. And we're realizing that's going to be exceedingly difficult. And that's only 200 vehicles. that's not even looking at the public, right? The infrastructure for that is going to be very difficult, and it's going to require a lot of work on our end. So thank you so much for thinking ahead. I certainly look forward to a lot of additional recommendations. Thank you. All right, so this was a discussion item only. Moving on to item number 6. We will now hear from Senior Regional Planner April de Jesus and Grant Manager Jenny Russo on the overview of flexible fleets and pilots.
Just put your PowerPoint up, please. There you go. Hi, everyone. My name is April de Jesus, and I'm a planner here at SANDAG, and I'm actually presenting with Nick Sofel from NCTD, and we're here to provide you an update on our Flexible Fleets program. In October of last year, the board approved $5 million allocation to develop a competitive grant program for flexible fleets, and we're here to just give you an update on our approach and schedule, and also just a heads up, there will be a survey, so pay attention, please. Thank you. So we've come here before with a flexible fleets updates, and just as a reminder, this includes micromobility, which is bike share, scooter share, microtransit, which are those cool little neighborhood electric vehicles, or even larger vehicles that can be held with an app to pick you up and drop you off in specific geographic areas. Also includes car share, ride share, and van pool. This program is going to build upon projects that we already have underway. We completed the Flexible Fleets Implementation Strategic Plan a few years ago with you and several CBOs, where you helped guide goals and objectives for this program. And then we've also been collaborating with several of our partner agencies as part of the Flexible Fleets Task Force, which is a subset of this group, to talk about different pilots in the region and share data and best practices and funding opportunities. I wanted to share that if you haven't already, within the report, there's a link to the open data portal for flexible fleets. This is a screenshot of that portal, which includes information from our GoSide neighborhood electric vehicle shuttle program. And you can just look at the historic ridership information and look at origin destination pairs for each of the services within San Diego. And we're hoping to continue building on this data collection, so we as a region can maximize the efficiency of these programs. So we are not trying to start from scratch. We are moving forward with this in line with the flexible fleets goals and objectives that were developed as part of the strategic plan. We want to improve access to transit. We want to reduce reliance on single occupancy vehicles. And we would like these pilot projects to be scalable and replicable throughout the region. So this is the timeline for when we anticipate launching the program. Right now, through the summer, we will be developing draft guidelines. So we're meeting with you, and then also Transportation Committee, and then we'll be working with the Flexible Fleets Task Force and Jenny Russo to further develop the guidelines that we anticipate releasing in September of this year. And then we will have the call for projects open. We're expecting in October, and then with all of the contract stuff that needs to happen, we're hoping to have a notice of intent to award by May of next year. So this will set you up for next fiscal year allocations if you are interested. Just so everybody knows, there are some requirements that need to be aligned with the type of funding that was approved. One of the requirements that we want you to start looking into with your legal team is federal provisions, because this is federal funding. If your local jurisdiction is not used to having federal funds, please look into that with your legal team. But we would like this program to have eligibility for all shared mobility types. We don't want to limit the opportunity for pilots in the region. There's a lot to learn. So we'd like to leave it flexible to all types. We'd like the applicants to have at least one partner with a local jurisdiction or a nonprofit in the region. So also because of the federal provisions aligned with it. And I think that as part of the opportunity, we're open to funding operations or capital funding, or we could be innovative with anything that has to do with marketing, data collection, or some type of regional integration. So we are really looking at innovative solutions as well. We anticipate a grant minimum of $100,000 and a maximum of $700,000. $5 million isn't a lot to be distributed through the entire counties. So we have to be a little cognizant of how we award these funds. So we anticipate having additional points awarded to applications that have evidence of matching funds. Although we're not going to require that, we will have extra points available to those projects. And in terms of the operations for your projects, we're anticipating at least funding 1 year or a maximum of 3 years. This will allow us to see and monitor how your pilot project will teach us more about effective services in our region. So just another emphasis on federal provisions. If you don't know if your legal team follows these federal provisions, please look into it. We have Title VI compliance, several labor provisions, federal certifications, and other federal provisions. And our legal team just wants to emphasize that right now is the time to double check that you guys follow these federal provisions. So here is the survey, and I think that this should pop up on your iPads. I think you just have to put in this code into your iPads as part of the Mentimeter, and if you don't, you can use your phone and scan the QR code, and also it should pop up. Kendall, we can move on to the survey when you're ready. Thank you. So we would like you to rank these focus areas for flexible fleets in areas of highest importance to less important as a focus area as we develop this program. We really think it's important to hear from you. And after we see the results from this group, I'll share the results from the Flexible Fleets Task Force just to see if we're in alignment or if there are any differences. Kindle, does it show us? There you go. Thank you. So just as we did in the task force meeting, I'm going to judge everyone's done by you looking at me. And if your head's still down, I'm assuming you're still ranking. So it's looking like we're starting to see financial sustainability at the top, which is something that is very important for this project. And then reducing greenhouse gas emissions, obviously, that's something that we would like to highlight as part of the program. This is actually pretty in alignment with our Flexible Fleets Task Force goals and objectives, which is nice. And it looks like everybody is looking at this screen. So I think that everybody has answered the survey. Thank you for your feedback. And then Kendall, if we can go back to the presentation, I'll share what the task force had. Oh, can you go back? There should be animation. Wait. There you go. So this is what the task force provided us feedback with when we gave them the survey. And there's a little bit of a difference. And afterwards, we had a dialogue on why these were selected over the other ones. And I think that part of the discussion was that equity, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, unique partnerships, innovation, data collection, that's part of the work we already do as part of all our projects. So that's not a focus area we want to look at specifically as part of this program. They wanted to see more integration with transit and the ability to influence travel behavior so people are less likely to use their single occupancy vehicles. And then obviously financial sustainability has been a challenge with several of our pilot projects. So this is a little different from what we heard here, but I think that all of these focus areas are really important. So I'm happy that you guys provided your feedback. So this is our milestone schedule for the program. We met with the Flexible Fleets Task Force last month, and I'm here with you today to get your feedback. We plan on presenting this to the Joint Regional Planning Committee and Transportation Committee in June. And then we will take all of this feedback back to the Flexible Fleets Task Force later in June to redefine how we want to put the guidelines together, and then take draft guidelines back to the Transportation Committee in July, and then finalize those guidelines again before we release for call for projects in October. And now I'm going to pass it on to Nick, who will share an update on a pilot that's going to be starting this summer.
Thank you so much, April. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee for allowing me to speak today. It's very exciting to present. On behalf of NCTD, again, I'm Nick Solful. I'm the Director of Strategic Planning. And we have some really exciting developments in microtransit and what we're doing in the district. There we go. Perfect. So give a little bit of background. NCTD decided to kind of shift gears and try to get involved in the microtransit space to provide first and last mile connections almost 2 years ago. And we did an RFP for a software provider to be able to provide us that mobility platform to enable these on-demand microtransit services. We selected a company called Spare Labs. They have had several really big successful points, one being DART in Dallas, Texas, the other ones being out here on the West Coast as well. So there's really good, they're a really good provider. We really see microtransit as being critical and playing a role in that first and last mile connections to and from transit and to reach hard to serve areas throughout the district. And last, in planning microtransit, we want to be very cognizant that we're doing this in the areas where it makes the most sense and where it's going to be highly utilized, and kind of acknowledging that demand response services overall as an industry, they tend to cost more money than traditional fixed route transit services. And so that's something we're very cognizant of as an operator of transit, is making sure that these services are allocated in the places where it's going to make the most amount of sense and meet regional goals. So just a quick modal comparison. I think this slide's probably been shown before. It kind of was adapted from SANDAG. You have our bread and butter, which is our bus service, so, defined fixed routes. Service length is usually 10 miles or plus on these routes, and it's really good for making regional connections. Microtransit's what we're trying to get into now, and so we really see this as a great opportunity to bridge the gap for that first and last mile connection to those fixed routes investments we've already made. Then there's also neighborhood electric vehicles. NCTD is not currently focused on NEVs, although there's been a lot of interest from local municipalities. We think they definitely have a place in the transportation ecosystem, especially at the local levels and in activity centers for those very short trips. A quick comparison, this uses what it would cost us as a transit operator to be able to put out service. And it's just an example of, let's say we needed to transport 60 people right now in this moment, right? How would you do that, and how much could it potentially cost? A fixed route bus carries 60 passengers and only requires one operator to operate that vehicle. You can move 60 people at the same time in one bus. When you go to microtransit and for NEVs, you do gain a lot of flexibility to be able to get people to and from very specific origins and destinations, which is exciting. However, there is an added operational cost, because the hidden cost is really not as much the cost of the vehicles, the capital equipment. The difficulty in operating these long-term is the operating funding. And the operating funding is determined by the number of operators you need to sustain that service to meet those same levels of productivity. And so we just want to bring this up just to kind of make the point that, there's ample funding traditionally to be able to purchase vehicles, where we always have a lack of funding in operations. And so this becomes really, really key when looking at microtransit development, because when you have that higher amount of passenger need that you need to be able to transport, you just need to continue to add more and more operators, and that makes the service more expensive on the operational budget. So our primary use cases for NCTD Plus is, first, we want to really focus on those hard to serve areas. We're looking at areas more in the rural areas or semi-rural areas where we really can't run a fixed route bus effectively. There's just not enough population density, or there's problems with topography and roads and street grid connectivity to make it very difficult to serve with fixed route. That's a perfect test case example for where we would like to see microtransit fill in the gap. We want to look at first and last mile connectivity to and from our fixed route investments, such as our Sprinter rail and our coaster. and as well as look at areas where there's limited pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. We know that almost every trip starts as a walk or bike trip, okay? And so if you don't have that infrastructure, it provides a pretty big barrier of asking people to walk through an unsafe condition to be able to get to their bus stop. So these are the three cases that we're kind of prioritizing for how we see microtransit fitting within our services of transit. All right. So to start this project, we actually evaluated 14 different microtransit service zones throughout NCTD's service area. We had one essentially at least in every single North County city and some additional ones. And this matches up fairly well with some of the work that was done here at SANDAG with flexible fleets, but as well as some things we heard from our board members and members of the public. In doing the evaluation, we looked at 4 different criteria that were weighted equally. We looked at equity, we looked at transit connectivity, efficiency, and points of service and interest. Our implementation strategy is to do this in a phased implementation where we want to be able to actually see how different types of service areas respond to microtransit. So we want to do 4 areas. They're on 12-month pilots and they're staggered. The idea is we want to be able to get learnings from each district and then apply those learnings to the next pilot and continue to grow and learn as we enter the microtransit space. And while we're doing this, we're looking to evaluate the service as well as to explore partnerships. Right now, we're planning on doing a microtransit pilot, but we only have 12 months of our own operations funding to be able to do pilot programs. We're going to be looking for opportunities for partnerships. And so we're very interested in the program that April just explained for flexible fleets funding. That's certainly something that, we're going to want to see more of. And, also reaching out to us at partners at the municipal level, partners at colleges, universities, private sector. We think that this is a great service that folks are going to want, and we would like to be able to cultivate those operational partnerships for funding. So when we did our suitability analysis of those 14 zones, there were 4 zones that kind of bubbled up to the top of that list. The first one was in the city of San Marcos, the city of Vista, kind of semi-rural area in the Fallbrook-Pala area, and then a district as well in the city of Oceanside. And so these 4 zones rated the best overall in terms of equity, connectivity, efficiency, and those points of interest. In setting our fare structure, we wanted to try to align our service as much as possible with existing demand response services we have. So NCTD currently operates Lyft, which is our paratransit demand response service. We operate Flex, which is a deviated fixed route service. And those base fares are $5 per trip. So our goal was to try to not necessarily come in less than what our existing demand response services are for fares. However, we do want to incentivize folks to use this service to go and connect to and from our transit modes, particularly in our Sprinter and our Coaster Rail. And so to that, we went ahead and then when we set fares for this, we're going to provide a discount of half price. So it's going to be $2.50, essentially equivalent to the base bus fare. If you want to use the microtransit service to go either to or from origin or destination to one of our transit centers. And so those are already set up in our app as geo-fenced areas. So when you say you want to go to or from, Palomar College Sprinter Station, it's automatically going to adjust the fare in the application environment down from $5 to $2.50. The other thing we want to incentivize is folks to be able to take pool trips and to take trips with friends and make multiple people join them in their reservation. So to that effect, any additional passenger added to a reservation beyond the first passenger, no matter where they're going, is going to be $2.50 as opposed to $5. And so we think that this fare structure is going to help us to align our goals for the service. Initially, NCTD Plus is not integrated with our regional Pronto fare system. If this becomes if we get sustainable funding and we do this long term, our intention will absolutely be to then do an integration so that this can be ahead and integrated with all the regional fare system. So for the first zone in the city of San Marcos, we're very excited to roll this out in the coming months. We spent a lot of time working with the public as well as with members in the city and CSUSM in San Marcos, as well as Palomar College, to really look and take a deep dive in what our initial service zone was. And we initially had a service zone that was 6.2 square miles. But in talking with the community, we got feedback and said, listen, there's some mobile home communities that have, needs-based riders that could really use this service, and there's destinations right outside the service area we'd like you to serve, and there's some new townhome communities. So we worked with those stakeholders and we expanded the service zone from 6.2 square miles to 9.7 square miles to accommodate those uses. Next, we've decided not to do a door-to-door service. We've decided to use what's called virtual stops. So these are many stops that are located throughout the city. I think we have over 300 of them. And the idea is that we're not going to go directly to someone's door to pick up the service, but we want to be able to meet you kind of corner to corner. So when you say you want to go from your house to get picked up, the system will automatically give you a very close stop, usually just walking out to the main street to be able to have pickup. And we want to do this to be able to facilitate efficient service. We don't want the vehicles waiting at gated communities, instance, for a gate to open, or circulating through a very disconnected suburban street grid, trying to get folks to kind of a medium point. It will certainly be a less walk than what it would be to ride our traditional fixed route bus. This is just a quick sample of what our initial pilot zone was for the city of San Marcos. And in the next slide, I'm going to just advance it so you can see we expanded it. You can kind of see the edges on both sides of the district. We made those expansions. You can kind of see even in the aerial photography, you can see those little white roofs. Those are mobile homes and manufactured home communities that we included in the district. And this is essentially our final service zone. So we're serving 4 Sprinter stations within this service area, including the CSUSM station, as well as the Palomar College station. We have the whole economic core of the city of San Marcos included in here, lots of destinations, shopping. We have healthcare. They have Kaiser Health that just opened a huge facility within the city. And so we're very excited to start serving this area. For our fleet, we have 10 passenger Ford Transit vans. They have a 9-seat capacity. Every single vehicle in our fleet is ADA accessible and wheelchair compliant. This is very important to us on the equity side to ensure that folks who have accessibility needs are going to receive the same quality of service as someone who does not have mobility or challenges. So that's critical to us, that we want to make sure that if someone has a need for a mobility device, they had the same wait time as someone who does not have a mobility device. And there's not disparities there. Sometimes when you create these systems and you only have, let's say, 1 vehicle allocated for a wheelchair, that can create a situation where there's disparities in wait times. Initially, we're going to deal with traditional fuels. We're looking, though, for our next generation zero emission vehicle for the replacement vehicles for the service as we move forward. Bicycle storage is going to be provided at our NCTD Sprinter stations where we have bike lockers and racks. Initially, there's no bike racks on board the service. However, we're going to be looking at collecting surveys from folks and seeing if that becomes a need long term. That could be something we can build into our next vehicle spec. You see from the picture, custom branding is really important for the service. We wanted this vehicle to really stand out. Our idea is to have folks see this vehicle pass them and they're going to kind of turn their heads and say, whoa, what was that just passed? And say, oh, it's NCTD Plus. It did hopefully spark interest in the community. And then all of our vehicles are going to have a fare box on board. So for folks who are unbanked and can't pay for their credit cards through the mobile app, they have the option to be able to pay cash on board, exact fare. I'm not going to go into this too much in detail, but we are looking at proposed measures of success and evaluation moving forward. We have key performance indicators, operations and planning, and of course, equity and Title VI considerations as a part of our evaluation of the service. As I mentioned before, we have funding in fiscal year 25 in the NCTD operations budget. We have not identified external sources, so we're very much interested in partnerships to be able to support the long-term sustainability of this microtransit program. And then last, I want to invite everyone, if you are available on May 20th or 21st, we're actually going to be rolling out a full live test of our microtransit service in the city of San Marcos. So our official go launch day is Monday, June 10th, but a couple of weeks prior to that, on May 20th and 21st, we're going to have the vehicles out in the service area, operating trips to try to have an opportunity to have all of our operators get training, our dispatch and reservationists get training, and be able to get some feedback from folks before we actually go through the full launch to be able to make any last minute changes we need so we can have a successful launch from the get-go. Our idea is we want to make sure that when we launch, everyone who hops on this vehicle has a really amazing experience because they usually give you one shot. If you don't get it right on the first shot, it's not as likely they're going to try it again a second time. So we want to make sure when we roll out on June 10th that we have a very successful launch. So if anyone is available and wanting to go to the city of San Marcos on that day, we have a QR code for sign up, and we're going to be sending instructions on how you can sign up to be able to get early access to the app and be able to take a free test ride on May 20th and 21st. So with that, I'll turn it over. Thank you so much. And I'll take any questions you might have about NCTD Plus.
Thank you, Nick. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much. A lot of really good information. Thank you. Do we have any questions from members of the public?
We actually have public comments on this item, the original draw. Please go ahead.
Yeah, again, I don't know that a question would be answered. You know, this is interesting to see because, you know, it's always an illusion of choice of thinking that we have more options to travel, right? But what you do is you take away options by even, you know, like when you're taking away parking spots or, you know, incentivizing certain things. So, you know, is this going to be something where they're the only ones that are going to be on the roads, like in a small little smart city, 15-minute city zone? And so that, you know, you kind of push people into the need to take it because there is no other option. You know, that's kind of what I foresee happening. It's just like, you know, people, I mean, people aren't using public transit like as many people who drive. And what we're doing is we're like taking away the privileges of a driver, which would be to have a parking spot, to then make it so impossible for people to drive around and get to where they need to go, that then they're forced into using this kind of transportation. So, you know, as nice as what you think you're doing is, it's also enslaving people.
And that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do we have any committee member comments or questions? Yes.
Sam Hassan in City Vista. I just have a question. Do you have a timeline for the implementation of the other service areas with the 3 others?
Yeah, so it's actually going to stagger almost every 6 months. So our intention is to go to City of Vista in April of 2025, and then the Fallbrook Pala area in October of 2025, and then Oceanside by April of 2026. So it's kind of 6 months staggered.
Sorry, one more question. How many vehicles you said for each service area?
Each service area, we have 2 to 3 vehicles dedicated. We have a total fleet of 10 vehicles for all 4 of those service zone pilots.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes.
Just what were the hours of operation that you have?
Yeah, we're starting off 7-day-a-week service from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then we're going to be monitoring use as that time goes to figure out, you know, is there use in all those hours? You know, initially we want to make sure that to the greatest ability that service span kind of matches the service zone of the Sprinter Rail corridor, since that's kind of the core of this service area in San Marcos. And we want to also make sure that we could accommodate folks getting out of night classes at CSUSM and Palomar College.
Additional questions? We'll just go straight down the line. Is that all right? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nick, for the presentation. It was super informative. I'm super excited about this. One thing that came to mind when you were mentioning, you know, grants and partnerships and all of that, exploring those opportunities. I think we're all constantly looking for opportunities like that. I would just open it up to kind of say, if you are looking in the North County area, think about, you know, military locations as well. Our military families are throughout the region. I think one of the things that often gets missed is we're not always considered a partner in the community, but we have our, you know, Marine Corps in the area. We also have Navy. And so just think about that, because there's a lot of funding opportunities through federal grants as well. So just an opportunity. I'm happy to connect you with also, you know, just any other POCs in that area, but think about that as well. And I think this is super, super great to provide alternatives, because I think one of the things that we do encounter with our military bases is that it's, you know, it's not always easy to find parking on bases. We're also looking for alternative modes of transportation for our servicemen and women. And so it's just good to continue to have options for them. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. Yeah, I would love to take that information.
Perfect.
And follow up.
Thank you. Yes.
I wanted to ask what marketing is being done for this service, because you're saying, oh, I can go out from my door, go to a main street, just get a ride. But for people who don't use transit, how are they going to know about this? How are they going to know to go to the website? I don't use transit.
Sure,
right?
sure.
I don't have a phone, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. So we're currently planning a bunch of on-the-ground engagement. We're going to be doing pop-ups at CSUSM and at Palomar College, as well as at our Sprinter stations. We have billboards that got to go online right along the 78 within the service zone. I just found out about that yesterday. It's a very exciting development. We're going to have, we're doing engagement at gas stations. You know, you have gas station advertisements on the toppers of the gas pumps. We're going to have those all over the city advertising the service. We're meeting with individual chamber Kiwanis, individual HOA civic associations, and so the idea is we're really going to get the word out. We're doing a big ribbon cutting at the San Marcos Farmers Market on June the 11th, which is a Tuesday. We're very excited about that. And said we think the significant engagement for the on-campus environment for the fall semester is critical for this launch because we think that the folks on campus are going to be some of the early adopters of the service. And so we're making a real big concerted effort to work with the university community and the higher education to make sure that word gets out to those populations.
Yeah, this is like step 2 of Nick's roadshow for the service. Thank you both for the presentation. April, I apologize if you mentioned this, but for the Flexible Fleets Grant Program, I'm assuming it'll be reimbursement based.
We haven't figured that out, but I'm assuming it probably would be.
Most of your grant programs, I feel like are, so yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I was particularly interested in the microtransit opportunities. As part of the 2025 regional plan, the County of San Diego has a lot of additional microtransit areas that have been identified, which is very encouraging. So I'm wondering if beyond these 4 pilot areas, if there's thoughts of expanding this pilot program to some of those additional communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we know that there's need in the community, and when we've heard that from residents, we've heard it from each city. The issue right now is lack of funding, right, and those partnerships. And so we're really looking for those opportunities to be able to match it up. So initially, yes, for the pilot, because we're using NCTD operations funding budget, we had to limit it, right? And we had to pick, who we think would be the most successful, for that initial pilot. But we're certainly open to additional conversations and partnerships as time goes on to make it successful and to serve as many residents as we can within the district.
Yes.
Sorry, just to add on, County of San Diego is definitely a partner to the Navy and a lot of different grants opportunities. So if you do decide to expand, which it sounds like it's already in the works, there would be also additional opportunities for that because we do have 3 metro bases. And so I think one of the things that we're having a hard time is providing parking, especially we have Point Loma, Coronado, and San Diego, and all of those areas are impacted. So if you do decide to branch out, I think it'd be a good opportunity to continue to have these conversations with regards to those opportunities for partnerships.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions, comments? Ms. Keller, yes.
Thank you for your presentation, and we're very excited that you're coming to San Marcos. We appreciate the coordination that you and your team have done, both in kind of letting us know what is coming and next steps, and then in planning for the marketing of the service, because we too deeply want it to be a success. We want it to have longevity beyond your pilot program. So to the extent that we can support your efforts or assist in getting the word out, we definitely want to do that. I hope that you will continue to touch base with us and not wait until the end of the 12 months. Let us help you make it a success. And then you mentioned the bike rack option possibility for future vehicles. And we're curious what the data will look like on that. I think it's possible that if the vehicles were equipped to handle bikes, that your system could play an even bigger role in our overall active transportation network in getting people to those active transportation options. So I'm glad you're considering it, and we look forward to hearing the data on that when it becomes available. Thank you.
Yes.
A couple various comments. One of them was reaching out to the public. As MTS was saying, we had a public outreach where we use these stickers with the QR codes on the ground at various locations. And I just wanted to throw that idea out with you because we found it very effective. Granted, we accidentally put some in NCTDs right away by accident, but putting that aside. But I mean, I think working with, other municipalities and, NCTD and other areas, putting those QR codes and out on the universities would be probably also really helpful because everybody has a phone on them and can grab that.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask is about bike racks, were you more specifically talking about bike racks on the vehicles themselves or just also at various stops and stations? Because one thing if you're talking about just bike racks specifically at the train stations at certain bus stops, would you consider more like bike lockers? Just because I'm thinking of the e-bikes and how those are becoming a lot more popular and people are wanting to have those a little bit more secure. Because I know we have specifically in Oceanside, the bike lockers, one at City Hall and one at the station. And they have their moments, but yeah.
Yeah, we have bike racks and lockers currently at the Sprinter stations along the corridor.
Okay.
So yeah, that was our initial thought for where bicycles could be stored. But yeah, we're looking right now at the possibility of adding bike racks to the actual vehicles when we purchase new vehicles that come out to add that bicycle storage in the front.
Yeah, and I'm really excited that April 2026 can't come soon enough for Oceanside, but I do think it's really important to note that having an NEV program and then working with the micromobility program that NCT is doing for all agencies is really important, because I know it's kind of a teamwork trying to reach out and address the first mile, last mile situation going on with all the cities and trying to get people where they need to go in a time efficient manner. And then like, in Oceanside, we have the Go Side NEV program that's been working really well. I know the numbers are going to be going up this summer because one thing is parking and is an issue. And with Kent Pendleton right there, hopefully that helps as well when this program, when you partner up with them, because parking is just getting more and more limited. And, you have all these amenities in the downtown area. And there's always that aspect as well that it helps. And working with the disadvantaged communities that can't necessarily feasibly get, from one location to another. So.
Thank you so much for the comments. 100%. We want to be able to have those partnerships facilitate those movements, first and last mile. The piece I didn't actually mention was that the operator pool that we're using for the service is actually our paratransit lift operator pool. So these operators actually have extensive training, in working with those populations. So we think it's going to be really, really good.
One more thing. And then, we have the NEV program and we got, funding from SANDAG, and we have some other fundings from other sources and from the city itself. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to keep, sustaining that funding source and getting and having further grants and everything so that we can keep that going. Because we did have a time in Oceanside where we had the program and then we had it on hold, and we had a lot of people saying, when are you bringing it back? We were able to bring it back, and I think we were able to keep it going, for the full year process, and maybe 2 years, I think it is, right? And so we're excited about that. But then after the 2 years, we keep needing to really think ahead and make sure we have, sustainable funding for that.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions? I would like to state the City National City is a part of a program as well. We were partially funded by the Clean Mobility Options through the California Climate Investments Program. And it is a very popular program. The biggest complaint that we have is now it's too popular of a program and it doesn't encompass the entire city, and the wait times are a little longer than we had hoped. So there's definitely a need for us to continue to not just fund the program permanently. We only have a 3-year grant, but then the other issue is making sure to expand it because it is a very popular program. So I very much look forward to maybe some creative solutions to that, working with regional partners to make sure that these programs are successful and permanently implemented. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we want to be respectful of everybody's time. It is 11:20 at the moment. We do have one more item, but I do think it is a very good discussion and informative item. We will be pushing it over to our July meeting. Yeah, July 11th meeting. So thank you so much. The next Mobility Working Group meeting is scheduled for Thursday, July 11th at 9:30 a.m. Thank you.